Glad you could be here this morning. Today we're going to be talking about Habakkuk.
Soldiers rise and press the battle ere the night shall veil the glowing skies. Against the foe in vales below, let all our strength be hurled. Faith is the victory we know that overcomes the world. Faith is the victory, faith is the victory. Oh, glorious victory that overcomes the world. To him that overcomes the foe, white raiment shall be given. Before the angels he shall know his name confessed in heaven. Then onward from the hills of light, our hearts with love aflame, they'll vanquish all the host of night. In Jesus' conquering name, faith is the victory, faith is the victory, oh glorious victory that overcomes the world.
There's a famous passage in the book of Habakkuk, the righteous shall live by faith, which is quoted 3 times. If you attribute Hebrews to Paul, it's quoted 3 times in the New Testament. Last week we looked at Nahum, and he was addressing the destruction of the nation of Assyria, and in the figure of destroying Nineveh. Nineveh was destroyed in 612. That's behind us when we are in Habakkuk. Now, in Habakkuk, we're looking at the date somewhere around 612, which was when Nineveh was destroyed, and 606. And most people tend to want to push Habakkuk close to that 606 date, which 605 is when Nebuchadnezzar came in and deported some of the Israelites, including Daniel and Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, also known as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And then later there were other deportations, 597, and then 586. The city was destroyed and the temple was destroyed. So we put Habakkuk in that time frame of between 612 and 606, closer to 606. Now, this letter is, this prophecy is a little different from from the other ones, in that he's really not talking to a nation or a people. This is a dialogue between God and Habakkuk. And he's got these questions like we have for God. But it's in the background of Judah and their decline. He's old enough that he could probably remember good King Josiah's reforms, and how he had brought the nation out of, or tried to bring the nation out of idolatry and debauchery that Manasseh and then Ammon had created. But in 609, Josiah was killed when he tried to help Pharaoh Necho at Carchemish, and Necho was killed, and Josiah was killed before Pharaoh Necho went up to Carchemish. Try not to get too bogged down in the history, but it's necessary to see the background. So he was old enough to see the reforms of Josiah, but then the decline that came in after that. With Jehoahaz was taken to Egypt by Pharaoh Necho and died there. He was the first king of Judah to die in exile. Jehoiakim, yes, came on the throne after that. You have to be careful about Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin. Jehoiakim came on the throne, and he was wicked. He enslaved the people. He built palaces. He impoverished the kingdom. When he died, nobody was sorry. He had the burial of a donkey, according to Jeremiah. But the nation went into decline. And then Jehoiachin came on the throne. He was only on the throne for 3 months. And then he was taken captive into Babylon. And Zedekiah was placed on the throne. And Zedekiah, if you read through the Kings and the Chronicles, he's the one, I'm getting them mixed up. He's made a covenant with Babylon that they would pay tribute, but then he broke that covenant, and as a result, Babylon came in, destroyed Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, took all the people into captivity into Babylon. So now we've moved from the threat of Assyria, and now in Habakkuk we have a threat from Babylon, which is also here in this book is called the Chaldeans. The original aristocracy people that became the Babylonians and the Medes were the Chaldeans. And they developed into different groups, and among those were the Babylonians and the Medes. But here they're called the Chaldeans. The theme of this is the universal supremacy of God over the wicked. God, that was not the common thought of the day. The common thought of the day was that the god Marduk was the god of the Babylonians, and Milcom was the god of the Edomites, and so forth. Each nation, each group had their own gods, and they thought of it as a territorial kind of thing. And if we defeat you, it's because our God is stronger than your God. And so our God is going to take over your territory. So this idea of the universal supremacy of God over the wicked was not the common thought. The message contained in this book is that evil is self-destructive. It doesn't matter whose evil it is. If you allow evil in your life, in the nation, it will destroy you. It will destroy the nation. Now, I'm going to go through this, try to not have to hurry at the end like I did last week, and I apologize for that, but sometimes there's just too much. I'm really looking forward to trying to do Zechariah in one Sunday. But anyway, that was facetious. I'm not looking forward to it. So let's start with Habakkuk, his first question. And I'm going to start with verse 1. It says, the oracle which Habakkuk the prophet saw. So he saw something, and he calls it an oracle. Another word that's translated sometimes here is the burden. The thing that weighs down on Habakkuk, that is this message that he is trying to convey here. And that is contained in verses 2 through 4. And the essence of it is, how long? How long, God, are you going to put up with this? And the other part of it is, why would you put up with this? And he's talking about, he's not talking to Judah, he's talking about Judah to God. And he can't figure this out. It says, God, we are a wicked nation. So let me read this. How long, O Lord, will I call for help and you not hear? I cry out. There's violence in the streets, school shootings. There's people that have road rage. There's and you don't do anything about it. Why have you let me live long enough to see the corruption in the government that we have? How come you've let me live long enough to see people be so angry with one another over different political ideas? Why have you let me live long enough to see we don't know the difference between male and female? We don't know what marriage is. Is that the way yours reads? It's pretty close to what he's saying. Why do you make me see iniquity and cause me to look on wickedness? Yes, destruction and violence are before me. Strife exists and contention arises. Our society is really peaceful, isn't it? Especially at election time. Therefore, the law is ignored and justice is never upheld. For the wicked surround the righteous, therefore justice comes out perverted. So he's got those two questions. How long are you going to put up with this? And why are you putting up with it? Patty and I became members of the Sunset Church in Lubbock in 74, 75 time frame. And the preacher there at the time repeated this expression over and over and over. If God doesn't judge America for the wickedness that we're experiencing, then he needs to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. That was nearly 50 years ago? Plus 50 plus. Have we gotten better in the last 50 years? I don't think so. I mean, a lot of you don't remember that, but hey, we are not getting better. We're getting worse in my judgment. And I think that there's a sense of, I feel a sense of doom. It's kind of like, it reminds me of Lot. Righteous Lot, greatly distressed by the sensual conduct of the wicked, for as that righteous man lived among them day after day, he was tormenting his righteous soul over their lawless deeds that he saw and heard. 2 Peter 2, 7 and 8. A lot of times we give Lot a bad name because when Abraham said, you choose, he chose Sodom and he moved towards Sodom. And we think, well, he should have gone the other direction. But then Abraham would have had to move to Sodom, I guess, because he gave Lot first choice. And the incestuous relationship that he had resulted in the kingdom of Ammon and Moab. But this passage says he was a righteous man, and he was disturbed by the ungodliness that he saw around him. We can't be the kind of people that God wants us to be if we don't hate evil as much as we love righteousness. And sometimes I think we're calloused. I know I am. I get calloused at things. There's language in movies and on TV that I can't believe is allowed, and then sometimes I just kind of it just passes by me without notice. Well, Jehovah responds. First of all, he says, look in verse 5. Look among the nations. Observe. Be astonished. Wonder. Because I'm doing something in your days you will not believe if you were told. God says, I'm going to take care of this. And when I do, you won't believe what I'm going to do. He says, Habakkuk, trust me, I'm going to take care of this. I don't put up with wickedness. When I tell you how I'm going to do it, you're not going to believe it. So he goes on to say in verses 6 through 11, for behold, I'm raising up the Chaldeans, that fierce and impetuous people who march throughout the earth to seize dwelling places which are not theirs. They are dreaded and feared. Their justice and authority originate with themselves. They make up their own laws. Their horses are swifter than leopards and keener than wolves in the evening. Their horsemen come galloping. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle, swooping down to devour. All of them come for violence. Their horde of faces moves forward. They collect captives like sand. They mock at kings. And rulers are a laughing matter to them. They laugh at every fortress and heap up rubble to capture it. They would pile up destroyed homes and things to build siege walls against the walls of the cities they were trying to destroy or attack. Then they will sweep through like wind and pass on. But they will be held guilty, they whose strength is their God. So what did they trust in? They trust in their own strength, their own army, their own military might. I hope we never trust in our military might. We'd be in trouble, I think. I think we do, don't we? You know, we talk about the war in Ukraine, talk about the second largest, most powerful army, Russia being pushed back by Ukraine. So if they're second, who's first most powerful army? You know, if God gets ready to judge us, it won't matter how strong our army is. It will not, and if we trust in that, we're trusting in the wrong thing. In verse 11, he says, but they will be held guilty, they whose strength is their God. So his first response is, justice and dignity will go forth from the Chaldeans. How's God going to address the ungodliness of Judah? He's going to bring the nation of the Chaldean nation against them. He's going to judge them through the Chaldeans. It's kind of like in Isaiah chapter 10, where Isaiah says, woe Assyria, the rod of my anger. So how did God judge Israel? The Assyrians destroyed them. But then what happened to the Assyrians? God took care of them too, because they were ungodly. He says here, they will sweep like the wind and go on. They're guilty. Whose own might is their God? So they trusted in the wrong thing. They have elevated their military prowess to the level of a god. And so God is going to judge them for that. Okay, my beard's too long. Habakkuk's second question is, are you not from everlasting, O Lord, my God, and my Holy One? We will not die. You, O Lord, have appointed them to judge, and you, O Rock, have established them to correct. What's he saying? I can't believe this. What did God say? I'm going to tell you, and you won't believe it. So here he is to say, I can't believe you'd do that. How could, you're a righteous, you're a holy God. He says, your eyes are too pure to approve evil, and you cannot look on wickedness with favor. And here's the big question. Why do you look with favor on those who deal treacherously? Why are you silent when the wicked swallow up those more righteous than they? Why have you made men like fish of the sea, like creeping things without a ruler over them? Then he talks, in my translation, verse 15 starts with italics. The Chaldeans bring all of them whipped with a hook. And I think that's a good insertion. If it's in italics, it wasn't in the original manuscript. So those questions, why? Why? Why, God? Why would you allow a nation that's more wicked than Judah to judge Judah, to destroy Judah? Wouldn't you have that question? What are you doing, God? You can't do that. I can't believe you'd go that way. That doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem fair. He compares them to fishermen, verses 15, 16, and 17. The Chaldeans, they're like a dragnet fishermen. They cast in the net, capture all these fish, but the fish represent nations and people. They capture all these people, and they do with them as they choose. He says they offer sacrifices to their nets because their net is so good at catching these fish, these people. And the net here would be their military ability to go in and capture people and conquer nations. He says, and their food is plentiful. The end of verse 16. Will they therefore empty their net and continually slay nations without sparing? Are you just going to let them run rampant over the world? God, how could you do this? Is there no end to their violence and their rapaciousness and the people that they capture? So you can hear Habakkuk. He's really confused. In chapter 2, before I get there, know for sure judgment is coming. Announce it plainly and live faithful. That's what he says in the next few verses. I'm going to have to quit ducking my head, I guess. I will stand on my guard, chapter 2, verse 1. So here's Habakkuk asking these questions. And he says, okay, God, answer these questions. Why? And he says, I'm going to stand guard and wait for the answer. And I'll wait here until I get an answer. And it looks like he doesn't have to wait long, because it says, I will stand on my guard post and station myself on the rampart, and I will keep watch to see what he will speak to me. What is Jehovah going to say to me? And how I may reply when I am reproved. So he knows he's being kind of audacious, talking to God this way. And he's expecting to be reproved. God's going to answer him. He's looking very closely at a judgment in 605, another one in 597, and then the final one in 586. That's when he's going to be reproved. Then the Lord answered me and said, record the vision, inscribe it on tablets, that the one who reads it may run. It's kind of like what he's saying is, I'm going to give you a vision, it's an answer, and you proclaim it, and you make it big enough and clear enough that nobody can misunderstand. It's kind of like if you are driving down the street and you see a sign about that big and it says stop, would you stop? I missed it. It was too small. If you see one that's about this big and you're going 70, you'll see it and you'll stop. That's what he's saying here. Make it big enough and plain enough so that the person who's running can see it while they're on the run, is the idea. Like a small sign when you're going 70s, my wife, I have to say, it says 60 there, because I don't care how big the sign is, she doesn't see it. It says 55, Patty. And so, he's saying, you proclaim it, make it clear, make it big enough that the person who's running can see it. For the vision is yet for the appointed time. It hastens toward the goal, and it will not fail. Though it tarries, wait for it. For it will certainly come, it will not delay. What's he answering there? The first question that he asked, how long? Verse 2, chapter 1, verse 2. How long are you going to put up with this? He said, wait for it. It's coming. And it won't be, an implication here is it's not very far off. It's going to happen. He's saying the vision is yet for the appointed time. So it's not now. It's out there in the future. And who knows when? Jehovah God knows when. You don't worry about it, Habakkuk. I know when the right time to do this is. It hastens toward its goal. In this vision and this process, God has a goal. He's going to purify Judah. He's going to have to take them into captivity. He's going to have to kill a bunch of them. He's going to have to destroy the temple. But he's going to purify this nation. It has a purpose, and it will not fail. Is God faithful in what he says he's going to do and what he does? He's faithful. He says this is not going to fail. Though it tarries, it's not here yet, wait for it will certainly come. It will not delay. In verse 4, behold, as for the proud one, who's the proud one here? The Chaldeans trusted in their might, trusted in their net, worshipped their net. Behold, as for the proud one, his soul is not right within him, but the righteous will live by his faith. When Paul quotes Habakkuk there and he says the righteous will live by faith, he's contrasting living by depending upon your own activity, your own keeping of the law, you're trusting in what you do, in your performance, versus trusting in the performance of God, of Jesus Christ, trusting in the blood that he shed for you rather than your own ability to work out your own salvation for yourself without reference to what God has done. But here, he's contrasting the righteous people with the Chaldeans, the proud, those who trust in their ability, again, trusting in their ability. In the next section, and so this living by faith, this trusting in faith, waiting is a sign of trust. Wait on the Lord is not just sitting around on your thumbs and waiting. It's trusting God to take care of things. So Jehovah's response to this the second part of this is he's going to talk about the Chaldeans, what's going to happen to them. Habakkuk, don't you worry about what I'm going to do. I'm going to take care of the Chaldeans. They're going to take care of my problem with Judah first, and then I'm going to take care of the Chaldeans. And he pronounces 5 woes. I'm going to start with verse 4 of chapter 2. Behold, as for the proud one, his soul is not right within him, but the righteous shall live by his faith. Furthermore, wine betrays the haughty man, so that he does not stay at home. And he enlarges his appetite like Sheol, and he is like death, never satisfied. He also gathers to himself all nations and collects to himself all people. So he's comparing here the Chaldeans to a drunkard. The drunkard is intoxicated, and he can't quit drinking, and he sometimes becomes proud and arrogant. But their drunkenness is they're intoxicated with their own power, and so they're behaving like drunkards. And then in verse 6 he starts 5 woes. Will not all of these take up a taunt song against him, even mockery and insinuations against him, and say, woe to him who increases what is not his? So, woe to that person who's greedy, or that nation that's a greedy nation, that builds itself on taking over other people and their greed. In verse 9, look at verse 8 first. Because you have looted many nations, all the remainder of your peoples will loot you, because of human bloodshed and violence done to the land. So they're greedy, they're taking over things, they're violent, warmongering. Verse 9, woe to him who gets evil gain for his house, to put his nest on high, which suggests pride. So, I'm lifted up, I'm going to put my house on top, I'm going to put it on top of the hill where I can have a good view, to be delivered from the hand of calamities. Notice in verse 11, surely the stone will cry out from the wall, and the rafter will answer it from the framework. In other words, you've built your house because you have killed, and you've been rapacious, and you've destroyed nations. So you've built your house, as he says earlier, on blood. And now the rafters and the walls say, you shouldn't have done it that way. You shouldn't have built it on the bodies and the blood of people. Then verse 12. Woe to him who builds the city with bloodshed, who founds a town with violence. So they built their city on slave labor and the people that they conquered. He says, this is really important, these 2 verses, 13 and 14, are very meaningful, I think. Is it not indeed from the Lord of hosts that people toil for fire, and nations grow weary for nothing? So all of this effort is going to lead into nothing, because somebody's going to come in and take it away from you eventually. But notice this next verse. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. Notice this contrast. Verse 13, people toil for fire, but the word of the Lord is going to cover like water. How do you put out a fire? You do it with water. So God's word is going to cover the world as the waters cover the sea. And notice this other contrast. For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord. In verse 13, nations grow weary for nothing. So what's important here? All of this vain effort for nothing? all of this fire and violence and things, or the word of the Lord, which fills the earth, which is like water that covers the earth and heals it. This is a messianic verse, I think. It's not quoted in the New Testament, but the idea of the word, the knowledge of the word of the Lord covering the earth is all over the New Testament. Verse 15, the fourth woe. Woe to you who make your neighbors drink, who mix in your venom even to make them drunk, so as to look on their nakedness. He's talking about the corrupting influence of Babylon. What is the figure for Rome in the book of Revelation? Woe about Babylon! You're mighty. You have fallen. Great is the fall of Babylon. He doesn't say Rome in Revelation. He's talking about Rome, but he's using Babylon as a figure. Babylon was a corrupting influence, drunkenness, sexual immorality, and so he's talking about that corrupting influence. Verse 17, there's a for the violence done to Lebanon. I don't think he's talking literally about Lebanon here. He may be, but he's talking about wherever they went, they destroyed. When they attacked a city, they built siege engines and they destroyed all the trees around them. In the Mosaic Law, if the Israelites were to attack a city, they could take down trees that were not fruit bearing and use those for siege engines, but they weren't allowed to destroy the land completely. But when these nations came and destroyed and put a city under siege, they took everything. They were like locusts. Verse 18 is the fifth woe. What profit is the idol when its maker has carved it, or an image, a teacher of the falsehood? For its maker trusts in his own handiwork. So the fifth woe is because of idolatry. And idolatry, in whatever form it comes, is foolish. Because, you're bowing down to what you've made yourself. And so whatever a creator is always greater than its creation. And yet these people would create things and then bow down to it. When I was in India, we were in a hotel. We heard this bell ringing and went downstairs, and there was an idol, a temple to Ganesh, who is the child with the elephant head. And there was this, and people bowing down to it and offering things to it. And it was too graphic, but we don't bow down to anything in this country, but wait a minute. What are our cathedrals today? Sports stadiums, airports, sometimes not so much political, but I think the sports stadiums that we do are pretty amazing. To me, in kind of a sad way. I'm getting political here. But this is woe to them. 5 woes. So God's going to take care of the Chaldeans. He's answered Habakkuk's questions. When? I know. You wait. How long? I know. You wait. But I'm going to take care of it. Not only am I going to take care of Judah, I'm going to take care of the people that take care of Judah for me. Because they're doing it for me. They're doing it for his people. And I'm running out of time. He says, know this, the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of Jehovah. Over 70 times in the book of Ezekiel, he'll say, and they will know that I am the Lord. I'm going to do this, and they will know that I'm the Lord. I'm going to do this, and they will know that I'm the Lord. And Jehovah is ruling from his temple. That's the last verse in chapter 22. 20 is the last verse in chapter 2. But the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silent before him. He's just saying, Habakkuk, hush up your complaining, quit your questioning, and wait. Because that's what faithful people do. And that doesn't mean that we are not torn up about the ungodliness that surrounds us. It's just that we're not going to be complaining to God about doing it, taking care of it. The last chapter is a prayer. In this prayer, it starts off in verse 1, a prayer of Habakkuk to the prophet. The prophet, according to the Shigionoth. Shigionoth is the only time it's used is in Habakkuk. And the general thinking is that this is an excited song of praise and glory. So it's not something you sing, Lord, I have heard the report about you, and I tear. No, this one is, Lord, I have heard the report about you, and I fear. Oh, Lord, revive your works in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. Remember mercy. God, I accept the fact that you're going to come in judgment. Be as merciful as justice will allow. Then he says, God comes from Teman and the holy mountain of Paran. His splendor covers the heavens. And you go down all the way through verse 7. I saw the tents of Cushan under distress. The tent curtains of the land of Midian were trembling. Did the Lord rage against the rivers? So he's talking about the power that God has manifested in the past. Teman is Edom. Midian is the Midianites that Gideon defeated with jars and lanterns and horns. And so I got too detailed, so I'm having to hurry again. He goes all the way through talking about the things that God has done in the past that demonstrate his power and glory. And then in verse 17, 18, and 19, tremendous statement of faith. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor the fruit be on the vines, the produce of the olive fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls. Yet, notice that, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. Can we say that? If this nation goes into economic decline, and I got pictures of Walmart shelves when COVID first hit. They were empty. Were we worried? Were we concerned? I will take joy in the God of my salvation. God the Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the deer's. He makes me tread on my high places. So what is he saying here? He said, I don't care what happens. I don't care how bad it gets. I'm going to trust God. The faith, the righteous shall live by faith. Faith is the victory. And that's the message of Habakkuk.